Okay, welcome back to your cranium, part 2. So I'm going to jump into, I go a little bit out of order from the book because that's just the way I've always done it. I'm going to start with the occipital bone. I'm going to start at the back of the skull. So bear with me as I get used to the camera and the orientation. Okay, the back of the skull. In your books, please do follow along because I think it'll be really helpful for you to follow along with what I'm doing in the book. The occipital bone starts on page 100, so you'll see a lot of the terms that I'm going to talk about listed first. They're going to do the anatomical terms. And then starting on page 102 and 103, some beautiful pictures of these terms that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to use my skull here to point these out, but follow along with the pictures in the book. And again, don't forget that you have that 3D website as a resource. Okay, so occipital landmarks. So you guys should have your landmark sheet. That's also uploaded into your module and resources. We're going to talk about a couple of landmarks. Okay, so I think I told you guys in the very first lecture with general anatomical terms that anatomists are lazy. They're going to name landmarks. When we say landmarks, it's anything on the bone that we can find and identify as a landmark. They name them for what they do. I mean, they're pretty lazy. It's just a matter of learning those anatomical terms. But once you learn those terms, it's really easy to find. And I know in the beginning it's not going to click. I promise you, at some point, it's fast. It's going to click. So don't worry right now if I'm going through this stuff and you're thinking, holy heck, this doesn't make any sense. It's practice. It's a lot of practice. So let's jump in. Okay, so our occipital bone landmarks. The first one you see on your list is called the external occipital protuberance. So let's break that term down. External means what? On the outside, right? So we're going to be looking on the outside of the skull, not on the inside. That makes sense. Occipital is the bone, right? So we're going to be looking on the outside of the occipital bone for a protuberance. And if we remember from our terms, a protuberance is a bump. So right at the back of the skull, this is a little one here on this guy, okay? You're going to find a bump. Move my finger, okay? So I don't even have to flip him that much for you guys to see it. I'm going to turn him a little sideways. Yep, here it is. Okay? That's your external occipital protuberance. Go ahead, feel the back of your skull. Right at the top, like right where the back of your skull meets your neck, you should feel a bump. Okay? Now, on men, that bump is going to be bigger. It's going to be more robust. So, in anatomy, we don't usually say bigger or smaller. We say robust. Robust means big. Okay? So, in men, that external occipital protuberance is going to be more robust. In women, it's going to be less robust. Okay. This is an area where all of these neck muscles attach in the back. Okay? That's how you breathe into this. Okay? So that protuberance attaches to your neck muscles. Men tend to have larger, thicker neck muscles. So they're going to need to have a larger, more robust external occipital protuberance. Okay? So when we finish our skull and we start to estimate gender, that is going to be one of the landmarks that we can look at. Okay? To see, does this look big? Does it look big and bumpy and robust? Okay? If the answer is yes, you may have a male skull. Okay? So you guys should be able to see that in your book on page 102. It's the kind of second one down that's labeled in the photo. So that's your external occipital protuberance. Bump on the outside of the occipital bone is literally what that means. Okay. We've got two, what we're calling nuchal lines. We've got an inferior and a superior. These are also areas in which muscles attached. Okay? So if you're looking at your book, you should be able to see those labeled. Your inferior and your superior nuchal line. Superior means above, inferior means below. So the superior nuchal line is going to be on top, and the inferior is going to be on the bottom. And I can see them right here. Okay, so if you're looking at my skull, let me get this one out of the way. This is my superior, this is my inferior. Okay, superior, inferior. Okay, so there's your protuberance, and then you should see these two lines: superior on top, inferior below. Okay. You'll also see those labeled in your book on that same page. 102. Superior, inferior, nuchal lines. Okay, so we've got to remember the term nuchal, but above, below, superior, inferior, they're lines. It's exactly what they are. We see them, they're lines. So again, those terms are going to tell you exactly what's happening. Your internal occipital protuberance. I'm going to pop this top off. So if we found the external, it was on the outside, the internal would be on the inside. Okay, so if you're looking at your book, page 103, you can see that it's really obvious right in there, your internal occipital protuberance. So let me just figure out the best camera angle. Okay. So on my skull, you can see it right here, kind of flipping it. So it's not super awesome to see on my skull, but it's literally like if you were holding the skull, I can pinch, right? There's my external, there's my internal, they're kind of connected. It's right there, okay? But your book shows it beautifully. So, internal and external occipital protuberances. Foramen magnum. Okay, so we talked about the term foramen. Do you guys remember that? Just going to give you guys a second to gather your thoughts as I put the topic just like that. Okay. Foramen in our anatomical terms means hole. Magnum means big, right? Big hole. Big hole, right? Your foramen magnum is that giant hole that your spinal column attaches to, right? So your spine comes into here and attaches into the brain. Big hole. Foramen magnum. All right. Occipital condyles. Okay, so we also talked about the term condyle. And if you remember, I mentioned that that's an area where two bones meet. It's a joint, okay? It tends to be smooth, okay? It's a bump. It tends to be very smooth, right? Because this is where two bones roll over each other. These protuberances and tripicals, they tend to be rough because that's where a muscle is attaching. But where two bones connect, it tends to be very, very smooth, okay? So if we go back to our picture on 102, sorry, and that's the exterior of the skull, you'll see that your occipital condyle is a little bit there. It's not an awesome picture of it. But here, you should be able to see right here on either side of our foramen magnum these bumps, okay? There it is right there. And it's smooth. It's nice and smooth, right on the outside of those foramen magnum. That is your occipital condyle, okay? Occipital bone, condyle is where it's going to attach to your vertebrae. So your first vertebrae attaches right here, and it's nice and smooth because it's a great joint, right? We can do this, we can do this, we can roll it all the way around. That's our occipital condyles, okay? So, occipital condyle. Jugular notch. I am not really going to make you guys do that one because I think in the online course it's really too hard to find and visualize. So go ahead and cross that out. It's not a term we're going to use. Okay, so those are all of the landmarks on our occipital bone. Let's talk about our parietal. Let me find those bad boys in the book. Those parietal bones are going to start on 92. Okay, so take a moment to go over to page 92. All right, our parietal bones. Remember, they're the ones right here on top. Okay? Our parietal bones. Typically, I would also make you guys be able to tell the difference between a right and a left parietal bone, but we're not going to do that. So just know that there is a right and left side. If we were in the class, it'd be a lot easier. I think it's really difficult to sight that bone without being able to hold it in your hands. So let's jump in to our parietal bones. And okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is on our landmark sheet, our superior and inferior temporal lines. Sometimes I find it's easier to take those landmarks together when we have a superior and inferior because they match. I'm trying to see if my up here has really obvious ones, which doesn't. So we're going to do our best to look at them. But you'll see in your book that there is a superior and inferior temporal line. The photo in the book also isn't really great and obvious. This is another landmark that tends to be a little bit more robust on men than it is women. And the reason is if you put your hand right here, your finger right here on the temple, and you move your jaw up and down, right? That jaw muscle is really strong. That's where it attaches, okay? So you can feel it flexing under your finger when you do that. So it tends to be more robust in men because men have bigger, more robust jaws, they have bigger muscles. So let's see if I can find it. So it's superior. She's got a little bit of a superior line. You'll be able to see that faint line. And then the inferior would be right about here. So not really obvious and clear on this skull. Not super obvious in your book. So I apologize. But if you were to imagine, okay? So imagine that there's two lines right here that attach this muscle. Okay? One is superior, one is inferior. Okay? Those are the temporal lines, superior and inferior. Meningeal grooves. For this one, we've got to look on the inside. Okay? So on page 93, on the inside of the skull, I'm going to put this one a little bit. So on the inside of the skull, you can see that you can see this one a little bit. There's lines, okay? And the pictures do a great job. Okay, these meningeal grooves, these are lines, they're vascular lines. So the veins inside your skull that bring blood to your brain, those are the lines, the meningeal lines. So they do look just like that. They look like a network of threads and veins, okay? So on the interior of your parietal bone, inside, you have meningeal lines, okay? Inside of the skull. That'll give you guys a okay. Sphenoid angle. You can see it in your book, but it might be hard for you guys to visualize where that is. Okay, so the parietal bones, okay, this corner here, right at the temple, okay, So they kind of come down here. This is the frontal bone, this is the temporal, and they make a little corner. That is the sphenoid angle. Okay? So it's kind of right here at the front of your temple. And then we have a mastoid angle. So we found a sphenoid that's at the front. Mastoid angle is here at the back. Oh, there it is. That's a good view. So it's the corner at the back. So we have a corner at the front and a corner at the back. Okay? Sphenoid, mastoid. Okay? So corner at the front and corner at the back. Sphenoid is at the front, mastoid is at the back. And that'll make more sense as we talk about all of our bones, because we know our sphenoid bone is at the front of our skull where our sinuses are. So that would make sense that the sphenoid angle would be right at the front. And when we talk about our temporal bone, we're going to talk about our mastoid, which is right here. So it would make sense that the mastoid angle is by the mastoid. Okay? So sphenoid, mastoid. Where are we on time? Okay, so we're 16 minutes into this one. I am going to pause. So we've covered the occipital bone and the parietal bone in this part 2. So part 3, we're going to finish up the frontal and then the temporal. We'll see if we can do the sphenoid angle. I'm trying to keep these actually in about 15 minutes. So you guys can break that up. Okay, so part 2 is going to end. We talked about the occipital and the parietal bones. To quick recap, occipital, we've got the occipital protuberance, external occipital protuberance. On the inside is the internal. We've got those nuclear lines, superior, inferior. We've got the magnum. We've got those occipital condyles. Oh, you know what? I skipped the external occipital condyles. You guys get a break on that then. I'm not going to talk about that. And the condylar canals and the jugular vein are two parts. So those are going to be the ones you're responsible for the occipital bone. Parietal, you've got the temporal lines, the superior and inferior temporal lines. You've got the meningeal grooves on the inside, right? Those veins. And then we've got the 2 angles. All right. So I will see you guys back for part 3.